In this second video of the digestive system, we're going to consider the stomach, exclusively looking at structures and functions of the stomach. In the first video, we considered the mouth, the activity that occurred in the mouth in terms of physical digestion, chemical digestion, and the formation of a bolus, the ball of food which gets swallowed, process of peristalsis, which forces it down the esophagus. And we stopped right here at the cardiac sphincter. Now I should mention before we get into the details of the structure of the stomach, the cardiac sphincter, the term cardiac normally refers to heart. But in terms of location in the body, it's right about here, and sometimes you get heartburn. Well, heartburn is simply a result of a backup of stomach juices into this region here, the bottom of the esophagus, and it causes pain like acid reflux, and therefore this has the name cardiac sphincter, simply close to the heart. Sphincter, circular muscle constriction. There's another one, this one down here, is the pyloric sphincter. It's at the bottom end of the stomach. The stomach is called a J-shaped organ. As a J-shaped organ, you can see that it looks like this, as the shape of a J like that. And it's a very muscular organ. To understand the muscles of it, you have to consider the muscles that are in the tube itself. So let's go back up and look at the layers of this. There are 4 layers in this tube. The outer serosa layer, which is just a skin. The muscularis. The submucosa. And the mucosa. Mucosa is the innermost layer. In the esophagus, in the small intestine down here, and even in the stomach itself, the outer layer of the muscularis is longitudinal muscles. Inside that is circular muscles. Inside of that, in the stomach region, there's another layer of muscle. There's a transverse muscles or obliques. Both words are used. You have to consider the action of these things. Circular and longitudinal muscles result in peristalsis. Longitudinal muscles run lengthways, circular muscles run around, longitudinal muscles, circular muscles. So you get peristaltic activity here and here. Longitudinal muscles contract to shorten the stomach. Circular muscles contract to squeeze the stomach like that. But now we've got this third layer of muscle, and it's transverse. It actually runs diagonally across these ones on the inside of the circular muscles, and when it contracts, it squeezes it this way, so you have the action of 3 layers of muscles. You have longitudinal muscles, circular muscles, transverse muscles, and you get this churning action. So the stomach is said to churn the food. So what we have a constriction here, we have a constriction here, we've got a large J-shaped organ which is churning the food material that's in it. Now how big is this thing? Well, they say the average is about 2 liters. This jug is about a 2-liter jug. I want you to think about it for a second. Could you imagine eating 2 liters of food at one time? I'll tell you what the world record is for hot dog eating in a little while when we get there. But if I were to eat something that big, that'd take up a lot of room. I'd be very, very full. You would stretch the stomach like that. And when it stretches, of course, it's putting pressure up here. So you can get some of the material from the stomach affecting the cardiac sphincter, and we'll get to that in just a second. So there's the structure of the stomach. Oh no, one more thing. We should mention the mucosa. Mucosa layer has all sorts of specializations. One of them is called rugae. If you look at it when the stomach is empty, rugae are just like the ribs of the inside, because this thing is capable of stretching so much. When it's not stretched, it's kind of wrinkled on the inside. And rugae are the names of the lining of the inside. And the churning action of the stomach is actually enhanced by the presence of rugae, because what it does, it adds sort of a rib, like almost like sandpaper rib friction to the inside of it like that. If you ever go to the store and find tripe in the meat department, tripe is actually stomach lining. You'll see those rugae on the tripe. Now, to look at the chemical activity of the stomach, we have to consider the chemistry of the material that's going through it. The bolus that we swallowed has a pH probably about 7. Inside the stomach, the pH is very, very different. When the bolus gets into the stomach, it affects the inside lining of the stomach, and on the inside lining are special nerve endings called mechanoreceptors, mechanically stimulated nerve receptors. They make contact. The mechanoreceptors affect the glands on the inside of the mucosal layer, and one part of the gland in particular is a G cell. Mechanoreceptors cause the G cells to release a substance called gastrin. Now, gastrin is a hormone, and all hormones travel throughout the body in the blood. So gastrin is released by the stomach, not into the stomach, but into the blood, where it circulates the body. It's found in the blood vessels of your arms, your legs, inside the blood vessels of your heart even, and eventually the gastrin will get into the blood vessels that serve the stomach. Those blood vessels are located in the submucosal layer. So the gastrin gets back to the stomach in here, and it affects the mucosal layer again, the glands, and causes the glands to secrete other substances. Now there's another bunch of cells in here. There's mucus cells, mucus secreting cells, which secrete mucus. We've got parietal cells, and we've got chief cells. Now the chief cells secrete pepsinogen. The parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid. Now, hydrochloric acid is a very strong acid. The bolus has a pH of around 7. Hydrochloric acid in the stomach reduces the pH to about 2. Hydrochloric acid has a pH of even lower than 2, but in the stomach, when it's mixed with the other stuff, it turns out the stomach juices have a pH of around 2. The effect of a pH around 2 on the bolus is to do a number of things. First of all, it's going to denature all the protein. So the protein that you ate gets denatured. Even the enzyme that was responsible for changing the starch into maltose gets denatured. The salivary amylase is no longer functional. The another thing that the pH does is it kills any bacteria that may be in your food, or any micro critters that could be in the food that you've swallowed. So the hydrochloric acid denatures the protein, it stops the activity of salivary amylase, it kills anything that could be in your food, and it starts the digestive action of the stomach itself. Chemical digestion in the stomach is a result of the activity of pepsinogen. Pepsinogen and hydrochloric acid combine. Here's what happens. Pepsinogen reacts with the hydrochloric acid and becomes pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme. Pepsin is an enzyme that breaks down protein. The protein's denatured, it's lost its tertiary structure, and pepsin works on it, breaks it up into smaller pieces. I should comment, pepsinogen, it generates or becomes, that's the root of that word. There's another one in the digestive system that's active in the small intestine, we'll get to that one. These things are called zymogens. It's a zymogen, an inactive form of an enzyme. The reason it's inactive is because the cells that produce it can't produce it in an active form. If the cells were produced to produce pepsin that would digest protein, the cells would actually digest themselves, and that doesn't work. So it has to be produced in an inactive form, activated in the interior of the stomach. It becomes pepsin, and pepsin quite simply takes protein and breaks it into polypeptides. No, we say polypeptides. Proteins, polymer of amino acids. Peptides are chunks of amino acids. They could be 3 amino acids long, 2 amino acids long, 5 amino acids long. They're just many different sized pieces of polypeptides. There could even be individual amino acids here, but we just summarize it all and just say that it's polypeptides. Pyloric sphincter is normally closed. It will open every once in a while as all this activity occurs, and it'll let a little bit, just a few drops of the material that's in the stomach into the small intestine. The material in the stomach, we started out as food, we turned it into bolus. You can't call it bolus anymore. It has a new name. The material in the stomach is now called acid chyme. C-H-Y-M-E. See, you can look that up in a dictionary. Chyme just means runny. It means that it's a runny acidic fluid. The chunks in it are pretty well all gone. We should mention nothing else has happened to any of the carbohydrates. If they weren't digested before they got to the cardiac sphincter, they're still not digested. Nothing has happened to the lipids. If you ate a lump of fat, it's down there, it's in your stomach, it's still a lump of fat. It's not doing anything down there. It hasn't been digested one bit. Nucleic acids, they haven't been digested. All of that activity occurs down here. That summarizes the stomach functions and structures, but I'd like to review it just one more time with you, and I'd like to review it in a slightly different way. I'd like to suggest that the stomach has 3 main functions. And I'd like to consider how the stomach is specialized in terms of its structures to manage to deal with those 3 main functions. One of the functions in the stomach is storage. The stomach stores a volume of food. It's got a constriction at the anterior end, cardiac sphincter. It's got a constriction at the posterior end, the pyloric sphincter. It has the ability to expand. So structurally it's specialized because it has sphincters to keep the materials in it, and it's expandable to contain, well, up to 2 liters of food. How many hot dogs? The world's record is 45 right now. If I ate 45 hot dogs, I wouldn't feel very well. Another function of the stomach is chemical digestion. And one of the ways it's specialized for chemical digestion is that it has a controlling mechanism for the release of enzymes. It has gastrin, which circulates around the body as a result of mechanoreceptors, and that causes a release of this enzyme which digests protein into polypeptides. It also is specialized for digestion because it deals with the pH. It changes pH of 7 to a pH of around 2, where it prevents the salivary amylase from being active and allows this enzyme to be active instead. So that's a specialization for digestion. It's also specialized for movement. It's connected to the esophagus, it's connected to the small intestine, so it allows it receives food, it allows it to food material, it allows it to pass along, so it's specialized for movement. But another way it's specialized for movement is because it has this transverse layer in the middle, so it allows that extra churning action, movement of the stomach, like that. In the next video of this series, we'll consider the activity that goes on in the small intestine here, in the duodenum itself. Thank you.